Pests beware, your fields have heroes. The Pests and Predators podcast is brought to you by Field Heroes and is powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Learn how beneficial insects fight pests and protect your crops. Visit fieldheroes.ca today.
Joining me now here on Real Ag Radio and RealAgriculture.com, it's Mike Schreiner. He's the leader of the provincial Green Party for Ontario and the MPP for the Guelph area. Mike, welcome here.
Hey, Lindsay, it's a pleasure to join you and be on Real Ag Radio.
Yes. Okay. So some exciting things going on. For those who don't know, Ontario had a provincial election just a little while ago. We squeaked ours in before the federal one. And so, of course, now comes the hard work of actually, governing this province and bringing bills forward. And you've got a private member's bill that you're bringing forward, obviously very pertinent to our audience. Tell us what it is and sort of how we got here.
Well, MPP Bobby Ann Brady, who's the MPP for Haldimand Norfolk, longtime conservative, now independent MPP, and I have co-sponsored a bill to protect farmland across Ontario by putting together a committee or a task force that would be farmer-led to come up with the criteria around how we would protect farmland through the creation of a food belt in Ontario. And I think this is so critically important at a time when we're losing 319 acres of farmland each and every day in Ontario. That's 1 in 9 farm families a week, equivalent of the size of the city of Kingston on an annual basis. And, that threatens our food security, our food sovereignty at a time when, Donald Trump is threatening our economy and our sovereignty. But it also really negatively affects our economy. The food and farming sector contributes $50 billion to the province's economy, employs 875,000 people in the province. 1 in 10 people in Ontario work somewhere along the food and farming value chain. And if we're going to pave over that asset base, it threatens our food security, it threatens our economy, and it threatens all those jobs.
Ontario it's a very populous province, obviously. So as you pointed out, we have a lot of people who already live here, a lot of new people arriving a lot. Everybody wants their little piece of paradise in suburbia, and that usually comes at the cost of farmland, as you said. Now this bill, as you mentioned, co-sponsored, the term food belt gets me, because is this an Ontario thing? Do we just love belts? We have green belts, we have all these sorts of things. So what is a food belt? How do you envision this?
The idea for food belt came from farmers themselves who said to me, the Greenbelt is this iconic brand in Ontario now. I mean, obviously, Premier Ford tried to open the Greenbelt for development, and there was huge pushback from the public, and rightfully so. And the Premier backed off that proposal. And farmers said to me, we need something that has that same kind of emotional connection for people to protect agricultural lands. And so that's when people were saying to me, why don't you propose a food belt, Mike? You're the champion at Queen's Park for protecting farmland. And so I ran with it. And the reason we decided to do the bill in a way that sets up a committee or a task force, is that I feel, and Bobby Ann feels, that farmers should lead this discussion. So we imagine the committee to be comprised of farmers themselves, leaders in agricultural organizations along the value chain, and land use planning experts. I'd say particularly those with expertise in rural land use planning, to come together, put together the criteria of what the food belt would look like. I mean, some of the things we've suggested they look at is, how do we improve soil health? How do we maintain our ability to feed ourselves? How do we support the entire agricultural ecosystem? So things like greenhouses, input suppliers, post-harvest handling facilities, on-farm markets, how that connects to the preservation of farmland, and also looking at, challenges that farmers face in terms of just moving equipment. As you see suburban encroachment into rural areas, it's becoming increasingly challenging for farmers to move equipment between fields, for example. So, looking at all of those different variables and coming forward with a strong plan, because we simply cannot continue to lose 319 acres of farmland every day.
I happen to know some farmers personally who, will send me a snap or a photo of them, planting next to a Walmart, like quite
Yeah.
literally next to. And so I can only imagine the traffic jam of trying to safely move equipment in and out, and safety, of course, for our farmers and for those on the road that share it as well. So definitely a huge concern in a populated area. Now, when I think Greenbelt, of course, I'm based at Ottawa. We have a Greenbelt as well,
That's right.
right? So it is, a thing, but it is a regional thing, right? So it has boundaries, it is whatever. To me, this sounds somewhat less about regionality, but how does that sort of fit into it as far as that question goes?
Well, so you're right. I mean, I imagine the food belt being something that we would create, you know, food belts across the province. Where the regionality component comes in is this importance of protecting the agricultural ecosystem. So everything from, we need to make sure that we have enough continuous land in place that it's easier for farmers to, work their fields, that we don't have conflict between livestock operations and suburban encroachment, and people say, hey, we don't like the smells here, that we have enough operations in place where input suppliers, food processors can be viable and profitable, implement dealerships, etc. So having those places and spaces throughout the province where you have a solid agricultural ecosystem that can be successful. And then I would also include environmental components of that as well. I mean, we need to have enough water to grow crops. We need to ensure that, we don't have air pollution damaging yields. In some cases, for crops that require pollination, that we have pollinator and pollinator habitat. So just looking at the entire business and environmental ecosystem that will lead to successful, profitable family farms. Because as I always tell people who, don't come from a farm background like myself, that, in order to protect farmland, you have to have profitable farmers too, because farmers need to and farm families need to make a living on that land. And so we see the preservation of farmland and the profitability of family farms critically connected, and all that support around those farms, whether it's on the input side or on the, processing, post-harvest handling, distribution side.
Now, this is you've co-sponsored this bill. It is a private member's bill. This is provincial. I'm more familiar maybe with the federal side, but what is the path forward for a bill like this, and what kind of support does it have?
Yeah, well, we're definitely seeing growing support. I mean, all three major farm organizations in Ontario have endorsed the bill. OFA, Christian Farmers, National Farmers Union, have a number of farm commodity organizations now coming forward with interest in supporting the bill. The Ontario Farmland Trust has come out in support of it. So my ballot date to debate the bill in the legislature is in another year. Not quite a year. And so we're going to use the next year to continue to build support. Not very many private members bills pass, but, I've been here 7 years and I've been a part of passing 3 private members bills. So it's certainly possible for members of the opposition who put forward a good idea and build public support for the bill to have it pass. I can tell you from the provincial election where I first put forward the idea of a food belt, very positive response from the agricultural community, as well as from a lot of urban folks who recognize that farmers feed cities. And, if you live in Toronto or Guelph or Kitchener-Waterloo or Windsor or Sudbury, wherever, you rely on farmers to, supply you with your meals each and every day. And then I think there's heightened concern given the Trump tariff threats and threats to our sovereignty, where more and more people are saying, whoa, what if the U.S. closed the border like they did during the COVID pandemic and we couldn't get access to PPE? What if they did that with food? And so the importance of protecting our food security, our food sovereignty, our ability to feed ourselves, is a national security issue as well as an important economic issue. And like I said earlier, if you pave over the land that creates all that wealth, all those jobs, all that food that feeds us, then that puts us in a very precarious position that we want to avoid.
And it sure doesn't come back. Also, love the let's have a comeback at the Farmers Feed Cities yellow shirts, everybody, because
Yeah,
mine,
100%.
yeah, mine is threadbare, and I've seen a few of the other ones out there. Still see the stickers every once in a while. Now you mentioned, and I want to leave on this point because I think it's really fascinating. So we went through a provincial election just recently. As you said, been at the 7 years. I have moved some of these through. In this last election. It's no secret that the farming public typically votes blue. That's rural areas, farming areas. That's, I mean, federally, provincially, it is sort of the assumption. It's an assumption. It's not always true. But in this election, personally speaking, I think I saw far more, not just people, talking about voting green, whatever, but actually actively, like people within the farming sector that are actively farming, really promoting the Green Party. And it's really, for me, the first time I saw it sort of at that level. What was the election like for you and for your team? What has the feedback been from the farming sector for you?
Very positive. I mean, I had so many people in the agricultural sector say to me, the Green Party was the only party that actually talked about agriculture, that talked about farming, that talked about the importance of food security, and not just protecting farmland, but enhancing business risk management programs, investing in local supply chains, having funding available to increase processing capacity in the province, a whole host of issues to have a profitable, viable food and farming sector. And we're the only party that really actively, regularly talks about the important contributions that farmers play to our economy and to, our environment and the vitality and health of rural communities in particular, but every community in the province. And so I think people rewarded us in the farm community by saying, it's the only party talking about it. I mean, it could be that I grew up on a farm myself. I grew up on a cash crop and cattle farm. Some of our high-profile candidates, I think, especially someone like Bronwyn Wilton in Wellington Halton Hills, is a leader in the agricultural sector. Runs a consulting business supporting food and farmers. And so I think, people saw we're the only ones talking about it. We're the only ones who are putting forward strong policies on it, and we have credible candidates with agricultural backgrounds who can talk about these issues in ways that we know what we're talking about. And some of that could also have been all three of the other party leaders were from the GTA, and I was the only one in the last election that said, you know what? What about rural hospitals? What about investments in rural schools? What about the fact that so many rural communities don't have the finances necessary to keep roads and bridges open in rural communities? Why is so much focus being placed on, building a fantasy tunnel under the 401 in the GTA, or $2.2 billion being spent to subsidize a mega spa on Toronto's waterfront, when so many rural communities don't have the funds they need to be able to provide the services that rural residents expect and deserve. And so I think people rewarded us with that by saying, hey, give these Greens a look.
Absolutely. All right. Mike Schreiner, thank you so much for joining me here on the show. I really appreciate it. And we'll keep tabs on where this bill goes. And we'll check in maybe in 6 months, see where it's at.
Okay. Thanks, Lindsay.
All right.